Welcome to Secrets of the Sussexes, where we count clicks not by press release promises but by what actually holds attention. And here's the week's clean math. The moment Catherine opened her diary, Harry's spotlight switched off. No drama, no sources close to the palace, just a brief line in the schedule, visits to weaving and silk mills, conversations about craft, culture, and the people who literally and metaphorically weave Britain's fabric. Result: newsfeeds pivoted to her, and His Highness of Podcast's big return slid back into a secondary storyline. No scandal. No effort. No turn me up, I'm here. That's monarchy in its purest form. Power is a calendar, not a camera. Catherine doesn't make series about herself, she ticks Suffolk and Kent, listens to weavers, watches the looms, talks technique, exports, and safeguarding schools of skill. The irony is that out of this boring bureaucracy journalists craft a living portrait of a country with something to be proud of, and the audience gets what Harry can't buy with a whole tour of charitable selfies: a sense of purpose. Because purpose is what stays on the factory floor tomorrow, not how many cameras caught the right angle today. The picture the week refused to show Harry looked like this. He flies in on important business, clearly wants a series, a couple of events, a little people's love, a spoonful of sweet nostalgia for the past when he was awaited, not politely tolerated. But the moment Catherine steps out in a reworn coat and smiles at the craftswoman lifting a fresh ribbon of silk from the frame, Harry's whole serial deflates. Because one has an agenda, the other has an occasion. Agendas live after headlines. Occasions die when the laptop closes. Funniest of all, there was no malice. The palace doesn't need to crowd out Harry, life sets priorities on its own. No Google Calendar cross-checked against podcasts, interviews, and private visits to memorials. The monarchy works the front line, from children's hospices to schools, from rural fairs to the industries that cement peacetime exports. With that volume you don't outshout anyone. You just do the work, and the work drowns the noise. Hence the contrast that so irritates the fan club of confessional sincerity. Catherine arrives without a show and leaves with a result. Harry arrives with a genre and leaves with a genre. She meets artisans who need space, grants, apprentice quotas, museum programs for schoolkids. He brings the familiar backdrop of "I wasn't heard, but I'll say it anyway." She has substance, he has content. And the louder the content, the clearer the hole where substance should be. That's also the heart of the style versus substance fight. Meghan has long played glossy stages, fashion galas to homey kitchen performances where easy is said more often than thank you. In that universe, simple is a set, like a rented location pretending to be home. Catherine doesn't perform simple, she economizes gestures. A repeat wear, a local label, a scarf in the region's palette, a seam a weaver would notice. Minimalism kills every gotcha. The loom doesn't tolerate posing. Either you know what you're doing, or you're in the way of those who do, no matter how many cameras are in the room. There's also a human layer you can't fake with edits or backdrop. Catherine appears with William at a quiet act of remembrance, no accidentally present lenses parked at the perfect distance. Classic royal mechanics. The sacred speaks in a whisper. You come to carry nothing away but duty, and people are willing to carry that quiet with you. Harry, in the same week, tries to assemble his own personal tableau, but the last decade of media therapy walks into the frame with him every time. The public remembers too well how quickly private becomes product. When trust is tired, no right tone can save it. Now, textiles and symbols. Britain is literally woven from local guilds, art schools, family workshops, and small firms making cloth for uniforms, state interiors, theatres, reenactments, wedding dresses, museum restorations. It's a living nerve. When the future queen goes there, she isn't making content, she's signing a guarantee. We'll keep the craft afloat, keep buying, developing, teaching, and won't let the last hand-stitched workshop die. In that moment, the palace matters more than the entertainment industry as an industry. However loudly people debate reforming the monarchy, this part stays conservative. Whoever preserves the craft gets the headline. Yes, some prefer to think the palace sweetened the week. Harry arrived, so they switched on Catherine. That's a cheap trope for people who've never seen a hard royal schedule. Everything schedulable is set long in advance, factory visits don't grow overnight. If things coincide, that's not a setup, it's a side effect of a big country running a dozen tracks at once. The simple truth: if you don't want to be overlapped, don't build your outings as a comeback tour. Do what needs no quotation marks, then you won't depend on someone else's calendar. Psychologically, it's humiliating for Harry. Yesterday it felt like, any minute now the new tone will land, people will see I've changed, they'll understand. That hope earns sympathy and evaporates the moment real competition for attention begins. You can be as moving as you like on a charity stage, and that really matters to those in the room, but the street will test you like an adult. What remains after you, besides you? If the answer is nothing but another episode, the first quiet trip to a silk mill will beat you without trying. That's why attempts to retell the week as poor Harry was overshadowed feel small. No one overshadowed him. Britain is not obliged to be the backdrop to his biography. Catherine doesn't step over him. She moves on because behind her move people, money, programs, workshops, museums, colleges, local suppliers, government contracts, everything that makes the royal machine useful. Harry still works old exposure formulas: arrived, spoke, hinted. Not evil, just outmatched by things that work without quotation marks. Let's also say what's already in the air. The grand plan to return and conquer fails when conquer is a kit of familiar emotions and return is a polite visit to someone else's field. The monarchy doesn't need your inner carnival. It has enough formal duties to be loved, criticized, and crucially read. That's why any step Catherine takes, hospital, exhibition, factory, rehab center, reads as a contribution, not a bid to stay trending. Contributions are read differently from confessions. Contributions last longer. Textiles also make the difference between glamour and style obvious. Glamour is when everything shines the same. Style is when a single stitch tells more than an hour-long interview. This week, one stitch erased a whole column of great hopes for a triumphant return. Fair and without malice, the country is sown from work. If you're on first-name terms with that work, you're seen at once. If you keep it at arm's length, you're politely seen off and forgotten until your next press release. What follows for Harry? Two paths. Either he stops fighting for the camera and learns to work for the quiet for years, without series or remixes of the same pain. Or he keeps believing that another story of being underestimated can outlast another Catherine Field visit to people her name is responsible for. Down the first road, maybe we'll one day see a man people await again. Down the second, we'll keep watching the same plot. He arrives, makes noise, leaves, and nothing remains. And our moral: no drumroll, just a precise diagnosis. The great always beats the loud. The great is when you walk into a workshop, talk to the craftswoman, fund equipment, find money for training, and a year later you return to find apprentices at the looms. The loud is when you enter the feed, talk about yourself, leave, and a week later you're replaced by someone's real work. Catherine showed the first again. Harry proved the second can lose without a head-to-head. And yes, not today, Harold isn't a sneer, it's a weekday note. The country has other business. It smells of tough silk, machine oil, and dye on the palms. That work doesn't care how many followers you have, how many cameras line the corridor, or how many words you're ready to say about yourself. It has its own measure of respect, results. Which is why Harry's week ended as it should, a line about Catherine doing what was needed, and an ellipsis after his name.